The day starts early in the morning on the 5th floor of Channel 9. Down the hall and in a large room, our cast of characters has already begun to assemble. This is the WDVM newsroom at 7 a.m. There are only 11 hours before airtime.
I have permission to go inside the hospital at all?
Negative.
You think there's a chance we might be able to talk to him?
Running a production as big and as complicated as a news department requires plenty of people, folks on whom much of the burden falls without any of the on-camera glory. For example, this is Don Thies, the assignment editor.
Primarily, an assignment editor is responsible for moving crews and reporters, taking our resources and allocating them in the most efficient way to cover whatever's happening in the city. Find the news, get the people there to cover it.
Working with Don amidst the controlled confusion that is the assignment desk is news manager Earl Casey.
I'm a collector. I help people coordinate the collection of the news, the reporters and the crews, scraping it together, pulling it together.
Between the two of them, they will assimilate and decipher the hundreds of pieces of information that come to them by phone calls and press releases and other sources. It's a tough job. There are an infinite number of stories out there, but only a limited number of reporters and photographers and equipment with which to cover them. And the biggest limitation of all is that, unlike a newspaper, which can expand or contract on a day-to-day basis, depending on how much news there is, well, the 6 o'clock newscast only runs 1 hour, every day. No more and no less.
There were two diplomats, one at Suburban, one as a caretaker for the embassy. Those are the only two diplomats that I've heard.
It's a pressure-filled job these folks have. Fortunately, they are all solid, stable, serious people who go about their work with pride and dignity. You might think that the boss would take a dim view of the horseplay, but shenanigans are a part of every newsroom, and news director Betty Endicott even endorses them.
The tension is released, and it's a tough job. There's a lot of work that goes on in a newsroom, and it's very tense, and there's a great deal of pressure. There are deadlines, there are problems in getting into editing booths, and part of it, every once in a while, you see some crazy, maybe it's Brenner, maybe it's Buchanan, maybe it's Jane Van Ryan being whizzed down the hall in a chair race. And it makes them all feel a little looser by the time they get... You need something to relieve those pressures and the tensions. And I do.
All right, I'm going to put it on the board, and if we don't have it, get back to me.
By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the stories for the 6 o'clock newscast are pretty well determined. Most of the reporters are back from assignments, scripts are being written, and a meeting is held to finalize the day's news-gathering efforts before producers and directors begin to mold what will eventually be the newscast you see on the air.
Hey, Bruce, you said 2.5? Minimum.
Now the responsibility for the newscast falls on this man, Jerry Grossman, producer of the 6 o'clock news.
A producer is responsible for laying out the show, deciding what order the stories go in, what visual elements are used, keeping the show moving along. Once that program begins, you are responsible for any and all elements in that program.
But as in all things, there are different interpretations to job descriptions.
All a producer does is look at everything that's come in and worry about how he can cut it down. And then he gets his little marker out and writes a whole bunch of little numbers and stories up on the whiteboard, and then worries about whether or not we follow all those little instructions. Then he goes downstairs in the control room and screams for an hour, and then he comes up and eats his dinner and goes home.
Seriously, when we're in trouble in the booth and we call down to the sports guys and say, look, we need time, we're in big trouble. Bruce Johnson's piece has gone long. You gotta help me out. Seriously, give me a break.
Every day we
I'll
do that.
never forget it when you said, tough luck, sucker, and slammed the phone.
She was reluctant to...
It's getting close to news time now, but before you go down to the control room with us, I'd like to dispel a few ideas associated with TV news. For instance, did you ever wonder where Gordon Peterson and Maureen Bunyan were shortly before news time? Well, they're typing scripts, cranking out copy and stories just like the rest of the hired hands. News is very much a group effort, and not very glamorous, really. For example, this is Gordon Barnes' office. Real glamorous, right? And here's another thing I bet you never thought about.
What people don't realize at times, too, I suffer just as much on weekends, because I'm off as well. So when the weather is bad on the weekend, I have to tolerate it.
Where's Gendel?
Right here, and
Bell has a live tag to this piece.
It's getting late. nearing 6 o'clock, and the tempo quickens. Director Ernie Bauer, who will call every shot in the control room during the newscast, is collating all the material that goes into the show.
How much time left in this? 5 seconds. Ready, camera, 3. Lose it, 3, 2, 1, track. Coming out to effects 1, and Gordon Peterson was at the Chiron. What, for the key? Take 2. Tape 8, there it is, stop 8. Unfreeze tape, unfreeze it. Okay, roll 8.
In the control room during the news, they speak to each other in a technical shorthand, a language filled with presets, chroma keys, takes, dissolves, countdowns.
After Gordon's name, I need Coleman.
The first bump will be power to the people.
Ready, effects 2 and recorder mic 1. Every done? Take my cue. Downstream. All right, camera 2 is the key shot Maureen. Take my cue. This guy show up right at the top. Lose it. Next we'll take the stand by tape 9. Next is tape 9 and the Chiron.
We should have a Costa Rica Chiron coming up.
In the next block, you're going to need Gendell, and you can sit him at reporter mic 1, but you're going to need the blue wall for him.
Rick, you know that we're using the shortened version of Alabama, page 72. All right, now, you know Brenner's got 4 tapes. He's dropping the Milwaukee-Seattle game, yes.
And somehow, it always gets on the air, usually slick and smooth, always professional. The hour flies by, an hour that started early in the morning on the 5th floor of Channel 9. And now it's 7 p.m. Down this hall, and in a large room, the cast of characters has begun to assemble. There are only 4 hours to go before the 11 o'clock news. We'll be right back with our PM Magazine departments.